Everyone, please chant. The holy names are there. And again, everyone, Hare Krishna, Hare Everyone, everyone, everyone. And again, everyone. Hare all together, everyone. Krishna. And again, everyone. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale. The children they have to be ecstatic outside if they go, no, don't cover his mouth like that, he can't breathe. So the parents have to take responsibility for the children. No, gently, it's okay. Gently. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravadi Pacharane Nivasesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarane. Om Jnanataminandasya Jana Jana Sulakaya Chaksu Similitan Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sa Pajanti Kam. Vansakalpa Truvasya Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hare Krishna. Good morning. Although the facilities, they're different from what we're used to, perhaps, children have to be quiet. Parents. And the natural tendency of children is not to be quiet, because they have so much energy. And the natural tendency of the elderly is to be quiet, because they don't have any energy. You're laughing now. Okay, let's see. Today is a festival day. Does anyone know the name of the festival? Raise your hand. Raise your hands. You have to raise both hands. Others. Wow, this is so exciting. I don't know which of the... It's funny how none of the adults know the name of the festival. Yes, right. Yes, do you know what that means? Do you know what festival it is? Do you know what festival it is? Do you know what happens in the Panihati Festival? Yeah? Yes. Has anyone... Raise your hand if you've been to Panihati. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you've ever had a Panihati festival in Panihati. There's something very wonderful about this festival. But before we tell some of the philosophy and story behind the festival, I'd like to tell you a little bit of my own history about this. And maybe you can just put on that first slide. Will it take a few moments? That when I began seriously chanting Hare Krishna, or somewhat seriously, in this life, it was quite a few years ago, and most of you perhaps, especially the little ones, the younger ones, because it was in 1968. Krishnas, what year were you born? Yeah.
2009.
2009. So where were you in yes, and you?
2011.
Okay. And where were you in 1968?
Previous life.
Yeah, I think old Sadhu in the Himalayas, Dariwala. Maybe not. But in 1968, I was in the university, and I began seriously chanting Hare Krishna, and I had actually met Srila Prabhupada in 1968. And this was the first Back to Godhead magazine that was published in those days. I think it was number 16 published in the United States. Now, I can't even imagine what most of the people who saw this magazine, who never had any idea of what Lord Nrsimhadev, who Lord Nrsimhadev was the lion. At least they didn't have the intestines of Hiranyakashipu around his neck. But this was the first Back to Godhead magazine that I saw. And there was one article in it that somehow really struck me. Now the article had a picture in it, a drawing. And it was the drawing that really caught my attention. And I'm not exactly sure why. And could you put on the photo? It was this very drawing. Yes. Now, in this drawing, there is Haridas Thakur on the left. And he is chanting with a young boy, young man named Raghunath Das. And for some reason, when I saw this this drawing, I thought, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen. Just chanting and chanting and chanting in the most peaceful of places. And chanting and chanting, and it just looked ideal. But I didn't know at this time any of the story or any of the pastimes, or I didn't know who Haridas Thakur was, I didn't know who Raghunath Das Goswami was, but I thought, this is wonderful. As it turns out, Haridas Thakur, maybe you can take that. As it turns out, Haridas Thakur once visited the home of Raghunath Das, his father and uncle, and they were very, very wealthy mercantile people. And this was in a particular part of Bengal where in Saptagrama, Sri Krishnapur, as it was called. Raise your hand if you've been to Raghunath Das's place there. And Udaran Datta Thakur's place, all in the same area. And this is the area where Nithyananda Prabhu later preached. He was preaching in this area. So in any case, Haridas Thakur went to this place, and there was an assembly, and he was glorifying the holy names. And this is described in the 3rd chapter of the Antya-lila of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Raise your hand if you've read the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita. You really read it all, little one? Is that true? Maybe in your last life. But it is a very exceptional book, let me say that. It's just full of sweetness. So in any case, this is described in the 3rd chapter, and what we're going to speak about today is described in the 6th chapter of Antya-lila. In the 3rd chapter, Haridas Thakur, and the whole chapter describes the glories of Haridas Thakur and the glories of the holy names of Krishna. And in that chapter, the holy names of Krishna are described just anyone chanting the holy names of Krishna can become so easily liberated. But not only liberation is available, this is not really the result of chanting Hare Krishna. The result of the proper ultimate result of chanting Hare Krishna, chanting Krishna's names, is prema bhakti, love for Krishna, and ultimately entering to the lila, the pastimes of Krishna. This is what is the goal of chanting Krishna's names. And Haridas Thakur described this in an assembly, and one of the members of the assembly was a strict follower of the rules and regulations of the Vedas, and he disagreed with Haridas, and he said, how can just chanting Hare Krishna give you liberation? And Haridas said, not only does it give it liberation, only the shadow, the abhasa of chanting Krishna's names liberates you from all sins, past and present and even future, actually. And then there was an argument. And anyway, this is what's described in the 3rd chapter of Antya-lila. But in the 6th chapter, it describes how Srila Raghunath Das Goswami became one of the most intimate associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. From a young boy chanting with Haridas Thakur on the bank of the river Saraswati, actually, and then becoming one of the most intimate, and one of the son of two of the most powerful, wealthiest persons in all of Bengal at that time. And then suddenly he is the most intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. So the 6th chapter describes the entire adventure or the journey that Raghunath Das took to bring him to that most amazing position. And there are 2 persons, one described in the 5th chapter and one in the 6th chapter, Raghunath Das. In the 5th chapter, Ramananda Roy is described. This is Antya-lila. And these two persons are not to be imitated, but they really exhibit, as Srila Prabhupada explains in one purport, the actual possibility of what is observable that one who chants Krishna's holy names can obtain. Ramananda Roy was so detached from his material body because he was living on the level of his spiritual body. He was so detached that he could deal so intimately with young girls, beautiful young girls. He would train them in the drama, but he was not the least bit affected. And Raghunath Das, he was so detached from his material body because he too was living and getting nourishment on the spiritual platform that he, practically speaking, gave up all eating completely. Every other day he would eat one small container of buttermilk chach every other day, and that's all that he would eat. And he was thin, yes, but he was alive, completely alive, full of spiritual energy. Not sleepy in the slightest bit, practically speaking. He would sleep for an hour and a half a night when he had time. But he would be chanting, speaking to people about Krishna, and doing Dandavat Parikram, paying obeisances actually to all the different places in Vrindavan for hours a day. So that takes energy. He was alive, fully empowered, alive on the spiritual platform, living on that level. So these two are examples of those who are really qualified to associate intimately on the highest level with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when it speaks in the 6th chapter about how Raghunath Das obtained this, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj, the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he heard this specific story that he's going to narrate, that we're going to hear about the Panihati Festival. He heard this from Raghunath Das himself, who participated in it. So here's the practical beginning of the pastime as described by Kaviraj Goswami. That after being with Haridas Thakur and chanting with this person who was so addicted to chanting Krishna's names and getting so much flavor and taste and life from chanting Krishna's names that practically speaking he would chant 24 hours a day. He would chant 64 rounds times 3. How many is that? Without taking out your mobile phones? 192. Yes. We obviously have some IT people here. Yes. How many rounds? How long does it take you approximately to chant 16 rounds? 2 hours, say, approximately. And he chanted how many? So 64 rounds is 16 times 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. And then he would chant 3 64s. So how many hours is that? 24 approximately. And the rest of the time he would take rest, which doesn't leave very much. And he would only eat after, but it wasn't forced. It wasn't a chore. This was his life, his greatest pleasure. So after associating with a person like that, it is like touching electricity. Raghunath Das became so inspired, and when he heard that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas, he just wanted to be with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had no other desire. His father was so wealthy, and a devotee too. But Raghunath didn't want to have anything to do with material wealth at all. So he would run away, even though he was an adult at that time. He would run away. He was married. He would run away and try to seek shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But his father was very attached to him, and he wouldn't let him go. So Raghunath would run away, and his father would have watchmen, his chokidars, and they would capture him and bring him back. And he would run away again, and they would bring him back, and he would run away and bring him back. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at that time, when he first took sannyas, he first traveled all over South India. How many of you are from South India? How many of you from South India are not your body? Interesting. Only Mataji. Okay. But anyway, Mahaprabhu also couldn't resist going to South India because of the nice South Indian devotees that are there. So that he traveled for 2 years. First he went to Jagannath Puri after taking sannyas, and there he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then he changed the heart. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was practically speaking the greatest scholar in India at that time, or one of the greatest scholars in India. Historically, he was one of the greatest scholars. I once had a book on something or another about Indian history, and it was mentioning how Vasudeva Sarvabhauma was a great scholar of Navanyaya, and he went to Matila and studied it and then memorized the book, and then went to Navadvip and he started teaching the book that he had memorized. And the reason he had to memorize it because the teacher of Navanyaya wouldn't let anyone copy the book, so he just memorized it and then began teaching it. And then when he changed by the association, by the influence of Mahaprabhu, his heart changed so dramatically that he became the greatest devotee. So when Mahaprabhu, after taking sannyas, he changed the heart of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then he went on tour of South India for 2 years. Then he came back to Jagannath Puri, and then he tried to go to Vrindavan and end up going to Bengal, to Ramakeli. Raise your hand if you've been to Ramakeli. Yes, you've been there? You can take me one day. I've never been. And there he met Rupa and Sanatan. But on the way there, he stopped in the house of Advaitacharya, which is in Shantipur. And there, from where Raghunath Das was staying in Saptagram, it's approximately 60 kilometers or so, approximately, as far as I understand, to Shantipur. And Raghunath Das came there. And Mahaprabhu was there, and he spent 7 days. Raghunath Das spent 7 days with Mahaprabhu while he was a sannyasi. And then Mahaprabhu touched Raghunath Das with his lotus feet. Here's the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Raise your hand if you can see them. That's amazing. You have spiritual eyes. But I wanted to show you something else. And I'll have to explain this a little bit more later. Raise your hand if you can see these. These are actual imprints of the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Would you like to see them?
Yes.
Would you like to have them on your head?
Yes.
Well, we might be able to arrange that. I'll tell you later how I... Now, can you see them? Come up quickly. Well, I'm still in the mood to let you have them on your head. Wait. I remember one time when the gopis were installed in Mayapur, and I was part of the installation, and it was so heart-touching, and the whole room was filled with devotees, the whole temple room. There was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of devotees, and I thought in a very magnanimous way, I want to distribute some of the tulsi leaves from the Abhishek. So I started going like this, and I almost caused the death of hundreds of people because there was almost a stampede. It's something. Okay, sit down. Everyone else sit down, and later, all of you will get to your head. A little bit later. But a little bit later. You're disguised as a little girl. A little later. A little later. Is it okay? And I'll tell you where that comes from. Sit down quickly, because I want to tell you the rest of the story, the rest of the pastime. So Mahaprabhu, knowing that Raghunath, he knew his heart, that Raghunath Das was not at all attached to material happiness, that he only wanted one thing in life. And that one thing was to have the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what did Mahaprabhu tell him after blessing him by touching his lotus feet? This is described in Madhya Lila. He said, be patient and return home. Don't be a crazy fellow. By and by, you will be able to cross the ocean of material existence. Don't make yourself a show bottle devotee and become a false renunciant. For the time being, enjoy the material world in a befitting way, but do not become attached to it. Within your heart, you should keep yourself very faithful. But externally, you may behave like an ordinary man. Krishna will soon be very pleased and deliver you from the clutches of Maya. And then you may see me in Jagannath Puri when I return after visiting Vrindavan. So he didn't tell him to leave everything. Externally, he told him to leave everything material internally. Very deeply be faithful in your heart. Prabhupada explains in his purport, things should be accepted for the Lord's service and not for one's personal sense gratification. If one accepts something without attachment and accepts it because it is related to Krishna, one's renunciation is called Yukta Vairagya. Since Krishna is the absolute truth, whatever is accepted for his service is also the absolute truth. There's so much and many important instructions in Prabhupada's books, very practical instructions. Now, Raghunath Das went home, and then for 1 year he acted. He actually never entered the inner part of the house again, though. But he acted just like an ordinary materialistic business person. And there's a little pastime mentioned to give an example of that in the 6th chapter of Antya-lila. But inside, he only had one deep desire, and that was to attain the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet. So for 1 year he acted in this way, and then Mahaprabhu returned to Jagannath Puri from Vrindavan, and Raghunath started running away again. And his father started bringing him back again and again and again. And then Raghunath Das had an idea. And that idea was to go and see Lord Nithyananda, who was in Panihati. Again, that was about 50, 60 kilometers away. So he went, he took his father's permission, and he went to see Lord Nithyananda. And that is the beginning of the Panihati Festival. Now I'm going to talk some and read some of these verses. Now, in the village of Panihati, Panihati Grame Poila Prabhupada Darshana, he had the darshan, he was able to be in the presence of Lord Nithyananda Prabhu. Kirtaniya Sevaka Sange Ara Bahujana. And Nithyananda Prabhu was accompanied by many kirtaniyas and many servants and many others. And please listen. Ganga Tire, what does that mean? Raise your hand. He was so Nithyananda was sitting by the bank of the Ganga in Panihati, Vrikshamule, by the root of a tree, Pandara Upare. He was sitting on a rock under a tree by the bank of the Ganga. Vaisya Chena Yena Koti Surodaya Kori. Koti Surodaya Kori. And he was effulgent as hundreds of suns. And this was what Raghunath Das directly told to Krishnadas Kaviraj, explaining his experience of seeing Nithyananda Prabhu. Now, many devotees sat on the ground surrounding Nithyananda, and seeing Nithyananda, who was so effulgent, and seeing all the devotees surrounding him, Raghunath Das, Deki Prabhupada Prabhav, seeing his influence, seeing his Shakti, Raghunath Vishmita. What does that mean? Sometimes it's hard to hear. Yes, yes. Thank you. It's hard to understand Bengali spoken with a Brooklyn accent. Raghunath Das, to see this scene, he was astonished, filled with wonder. And from a distance, because Nithyananda was surrounded by all the devotees, sitting under a tree, on a rock, right by the Ganga bank, Raghunath Das immediately offered his obeisances. He fell from a distant place. But the servant of Nithyananda, he said, over there is Raghunath Das, and he's offering obeisances. Now, one important point to understand is that if someone was having a festival, and you're coming to a festival, we're going to have invited you, we're going to have chipped rice. Now, chipped rice isn't considered the most opulent of all foods, crushed rice. It's simple food. And it's just a festival where you just hand out a simple food. Now, what is the excitement of that festival? Or what is the excitement of any event, actually? If you go with your family or your friends somewhere on a vacation, and we like to go to places we've never been before, that's a little interesting or exciting, but that's not what brings the pleasure of the event. What does bring the pleasure of the event? It's association. Okay. Who can say a little bit more? What brings the pleasure going anywhere? If it's like Krishna and Sudama, they were caught in the rain somewhere in a place that is now known as, I think it's called Sonar something. There was a mountain, and of course in a place in the village where they spent the night, it's called Narayan Gram right now. And there's most beautiful deities there of Sudama and Krishna. But that was the highest point of Sudama's life. Why? Because he was with Krishna. Because his heart was filled with love for Krishna, and Krishna's heart was filled with love for him. And that's what makes an event. If you go to the most beautiful place with a person that you're very angry at, and some of you have gone on vacations like that probably, it's not exactly pleasurable at all. But it's the sweetness of the loving dealings that's what really makes the event. Raghunath Das, his heart was already filled with love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His heart was already filled with the desire to serve. And when he saw Nithyananda Prabhu sitting in that way, so effulgent, he immediately offered his obeisances. And how did Nithyananda respond? Now, one must understand the nature of, something about the nature of Nithyananda Prabhu. Nithyananda Prabhu has a somewhat different nature than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nithyananda Prabhu's nature is joyful and playful and always happy and completely unpredictable how he's going to act. And he's the epitome, the personification of kindness, of mercy. Even if someone is in a difficult position, not acted properly, Nithyananda Prabhu is so merciful. And he would wander on Mahaprabhu's order through Bengal. Mahaprabhu told him, don't come to Bengal every year, from Bengal to see me in Jagannath Puri with all the other devotees. You stay in Bengal and preach. And you know how Nithyananda Prabhu would preach? He had his own preaching methodology. Just like book distributors, when they're distributing books, usually what's their line to stop someone? Excuse me, are you from here? Are you from here or out of town? Right? I shouldn't give away the secrets. So this is an open secret. So Nithyananda Prabhu had a different preaching strategy. He would approach the people and fall on the ground. Don't try to imitate this on Swanston Street. And roll on the ground. Please, we humbly request you, no imitation allowed. Unless you can become as effulgent as hundreds and hundreds of sons, don't imitate his preaching strategy. But he would roll on the ground, crying, and beg people to take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I beg you, one thing. Sometimes he would, when Mahaprabhu asked him and Haridas to go out and preach, and they would knock on the doors of people, and they, as if they were beggars, and they'd say, what do you want? You're begging for something? Yes, we beg you to Bolo Krishna, Bhajai Krishna, Koro Krishna, Sikha. Just chant Krishna's names. Just follow, worship Krishna. Follow. This is all we ask of you. And this was done with such a full heart. But different people had different reactions too. Some people became angry. Some people accused him of just cheating, being cheated. And other people said, yes, this is a simple request, I'll do it. But Nithyananda Prabhu was always giving and always merciful. So how is he going to react sitting with his friends in his jolly mood like a cowherd boy, practically speaking? So when the servant of Nithyananda pointed out that Raghunath Das was there, he said, Chol dila darshana, ay, tora korumudandana. You're a thief. Because thieves always keep a distance away before they do what they want to do. In very, very, very loose language, common villagey language. Oh, come here, you're a thief. And today, I shall punish you. Now, Nithyananda Prabhu's pastimes are just full of, just like when the boys are playing together, the young boys, it's not that they ever talk philosophy or anything like that. They just have a good time, basically. Just play and laugh. And that was Nithyananda Prabhu's mood. So he wanted to have some fun. Because his name is Nityananda. He wants to have fun. But the most sweetest fun is in his association. Today, he said, I will punish you because you're a thief. But Raghunath wouldn't come near. And then Nithyananda Prabhu forcibly caught him and brought him near. And he took his lotus feet and placed them on Raghunath's head. He was very, by nature, merciful and funny. And being merciful, he spoke to Raghunath Das as follows: you are like a thief. For instead of coming near, you stay away at a distant place. But now I have captured you. And I will punish you. And here is your punishment. Today, you should make a festival. We're going to have a party, a festival. And you should, in this festival, you should feed all myself and my associates. You should feed us yogurt and chipped rice. There's a picture of Raghunath Das with Nithyananda Prabhu. From Chaitanya Charitamrita. What are you thinking right now? Were you waiting for the picture, or did your mind just wander somewhere else in the universe? Did it wander to Krishna's holy names? Okay. So when Raghunath Das heard this funny request of Nithyananda called as a punishment, how do you think he felt? What do you think?
Amazing.
Okay, yeah, but yes, one of the big boys.
Ecstatic.
He felt so happy, ecstatic. What do you think, Krishna?
Like really happy.
Really happy. What do you think? Yes.
Really
really, really, really happy. And you bet you think he felt really, 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 really happy. Indeed, he was so pleased. Raghunatha Mane, hearing this, Shuni Anandita Hoilo, he was filled with happiness, Ananda, bliss. Why? Because Nithyananda had personally given him some service to do. So everything depends on the consciousness. Of course, on some days, if someone would say, could you do something like, oh no, I'm just so tired, I just come from 60 kilometers away and it was so hard and now you're asking me to do, but not Raghunath Das. He was greatly pleased and he immediately sent his own men to the village to purchase all kinds of eatables and bring them back. He brought chipped rice, yogurt, milk, sweetmeats, sugar, bananas, and the kind of bananas I don't know if this is all over India, but in the Bengal side in Bangladesh there's something called champa cola. Does anyone know what those are? They're also, yes? They're also called chini cola. They're small and very sweet. You like them? So he brought them. Immediately he sent all the people with him because his father didn't send him alone. And as soon as the people nearby heard that a festival was being held, all kinds of brahmanas and other gentlemen, they began to arrive. And immediately or quickly, there were innumerable people. And seeing the crowd increasing, Raghunath Das arranged to get more food from other villages. And he also brought 200 to 400 large round earthen pots. He also obtained 5 or 7 specially large earthen pots. And in those pots, a brahmana began soaking chipped rice for the satisfaction of Lord Nithyananda. And there is the key in doing service that makes it different from doing work. It makes it savor when it's done for the satisfaction of one's beloved. That's what gives the life to work. That's what turns it into, from toil into ananda, when it is done to please one that one really wants to please. So in one place, chipped rice was soaked in hot milk. And in each of the large pots, then half the rice was mixed with yogurt, sugar, and champa cola. And the other half was mixed with condensed milk and a special type of banana known as champa cola. Then sugar, ghee, and camphor, a little bit of camphor were added. And after Nithyananda Prabhu bathed and changed his cloth, he sat on the raised platform. The brahmanas then brought before him 7 huge pots. And on that platform, all the most important associates of Nithyananda Prabhu, his other important men, they sat down in a circle around the Lord. And then Kaviraj Goswami names these very important associates: Ramdas, Sundaranda, Gadardha Das, Murari, Kamalakara, Sadashiva, Purandara, many, many important associates. And then, hearing that this festival was taking place, from all the neighboring villages, scholars, Brahmins, and pujaris, all of them came. And Nithyananda Prabhu, in his open-heartedness, he honored them, he welcomed them, he honored them, and he made them sit on the raised platform along with him. He made everyone feel welcome, and that's the art of welcoming guests, being actually concerned about their welfare and that they're pleased. And therefore, this is such an essential part of the Vedic culture, of the Indian culture, the concept of Atiti Bhagawan, that when someone comes to one's door, one welcomes him and makes them feel welcomed. And that you're happy to see them, not like in, with the little door thing. First you make sure, now you don't even have to do that. There's these little video things that you get, you just tell who's there to make sure that it's not someone who you don't want to see, or you press decline on your mobile phone and when it's the person you don't want to talk to and things like that. So everyone who came was welcomed with care, with affection, and offered 2 earthen pots. And one pot was put chipped rice with condensed milk, and in the other chipped rice with yogurt. It's an interesting point to meditate upon. How when people visit Krishna's temple, and when one greets the people who are visiting Krishna's temple, one greets them as a servant of the person whose temple it is. It's Radha Ballabha's temple, etc. And how could we as servants greet the people and make them feel welcome when they come? It's an interesting thought to meditate upon. Because after all, the Lord is welcoming them, and we are serving the Lord, so what is our service in that regard? So everyone who came was whether they were invited, not invited, 2 earthen pots, chipped rice and rice with yogurt. And other people, because that platform became full, other people sat in groups around the platform, and no one could even count how many people were there. And each person who came was given these 2 earthen pots, yogurt and sweet. And some of the Brahmins, it became so crowded, couldn't even find a place to sit around the platform. There was the platform, then around the platform, and they moved to the bank of the Ganga, and some people couldn't even find a spot by the Ganga bank, and they were in the water of the Ganga, described in this way. And they were sat down and they began eating their 2 kinds of chipped rice. So what makes the festival into a real festival, as opposed to just a crowd of people there? It's when the mood is the glorification of Nithyananda, of Mahaprabhu, of Radha Ballabha, of Srila Prabhupada, of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra Devi. When there is a mood amongst the servants of serving and glorifying the lordships, then the whole atmosphere becomes so attractive. And that's what this atmosphere, this joyous atmosphere was. It was so attractive that people came from villages and villages. And as they came, there was more and more people. That means they needed more food. And Raghunath Das and then the merchants would come with their food to sell, because there are so many people. And merchants like it when there's so many people. So Raghunath Das would buy all the food that they had and then feed them with that same food. So everyone was supplied 2 pots, and 20 men were distributing the food. And then there was one very famous person in Panihati named Raghava Pandit. And Raghava Pandit was a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come to his house and eat the food that he and his sister Damayanti would cook. And he was so careful. he would cook with so much devotion, just like in a festival. It's the mood that makes it joyous. If there's affection, if there's love, again, like any outing. So when they would cook in any activity, what's it that fills the cooking activity, for example, that makes it really tasty? And of course, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's bhakti, patram pushpam phalam toyam yomam bhakta prayachati taraham bhakti smarita. Asnami, I will accept it because you've cooked this with devotion for my pleasure. So Raghava Pandit would cook. He would purchase the finest of foods and cook for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come just to eat this food. He would, in the second chapter of Antya-lila, it speaks about different manifestations of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One is called Avirbhav, which means that he would manifest himself. There's Sakshat Darshan, Avesha. Avesha is when he would enter into someone. This is how Mahaprabhu would preach and spread Krishna consciousness everywhere by these 4 different manifestations. One is by his Sakshat Darshan, by his personal presence, and another. This was Avirbhav, where he would just manifest himself in a place. He would manifest himself when Sachi Mata would cook for him, because her love drew him to that cooking. Anytime she wanted to offer something, anytime, he would come. And he would come when Nithyananda Prabhu was dancing, when Srivas Thakur was holding Kirtan in his place. And he would come whenever Raghava Pandit would cook. So Raghava Pandit arrived there, and he was surprised because he lived nearby and he had cooked for Nithyananda, but there was Nithyananda holding a big festival. And the food was in his house waiting because Nithyananda didn't come for lunch. So Raghava Pandit was very surprised. And he cooked many foods with ghee, and he offered them to the Lord. He placed them before Nithyananda, and then he distributed. His happiness was in cooking and distributing this prasadam. And he said to Nithyananda Prabhu, "For you, sir, I have already offered food to my deities, but you are engaged in a festival here, and so no one is eating that food." And Nithyananda replied, "Don't worry, I'll come this evening. But now, you please sit down, and we're having a festival, and you join our festival." And he said, "I belong to a community of cowherd boys, and therefore I generally have many cowherd associates with me, and I am happy when we eat together in a picnic like this, by the sandy bank of a river." So Raghava Pandit sat down. Nithyananda had 2 pots of one sweet rice, one mixed with yogurt, brought to him. And then Nithyananda Prabhu did something very special. So all the devotees are sitting around and they're eating from their 2 pots. And Nithyananda Prabhu went into a trance of meditation. And it doesn't describe much about his trance. But what he did, by the power of his devotion, by the power of his relationship, he called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. He brought Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived, Lord Nithyananda Prabhu stood up. Then they both saw how everyone was enjoying this festival of chipped rice with yogurt and condensed milk. And from each and every pot, Nithyananda took a little bit of the chipped rice and he put it into the mouth of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled, and he took a little bit from different pots and put it in the mouth of Nithyananda Prabhu, and they were laughing. So Nithyananda's joyful mood was so contagious that Mahaprabhu joined in this festival of cowherd boy-like festival by the bank of the Ganga, thinking it was just like Krishna and Balaram by the Yamuna. So Nithyananda was walking through the groups of devotees and picking up food and going like this, but no one could see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it looked quite interesting, let us say. But all the Vaishnavas were watching Nithyananda's happiness and his what he was doing, and they began to experience more and more joy. But some of the devotees were very fortunate, and they could see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally present. Then Nithyananda Prabhu smiled, he sat down. On his right side, he kept 4 pots of chipped rice that had not been made from boiled paddy, and Lord Nithyananda, he kept that place on his right side for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and together the 2 brothers began eating the chipped rice in this festival. And then he told all the devotees, and Prabhupada also did something like this. Do you know that on New Year's Eve in 1966, at 26 2nd Avenue, the devotees, the young boys and girls, they said, we should do something, we should have a New Year's Eve party. And Prabhupada said, okay. And what do you do at a New Year's Eve party? You have, you don't do what you would do when Prabhupada is there. So they stayed up having kirtan, and then till 12 midnight. And then when it was 12 midnight, the feast was served, and everyone present took prasadam. And Prabhupada told everyone, while you're eating, you should also chant Krishna's names while you're eating. So Nithyananda Prabhu, he ordered all of them, all the people present, even while they were eating, he said, all of you, chant the name of Lord Hari. Immediately, the holy names, Hari, Hari, Hari. Of course, they were more enthusiastic than that, but okay, let's just try one more time. All of you, Nithyananda Prabhu said, chanting the name of Hari, you take your food. Hari! Hari! Later on, when we will have our own chipped rice festival, we will be able to do this as well. And when the Vaishnavas were chanting the holy names, just so joyfully, and they were eating, they remembered how Krishna and Balaram ate with their companions, the cowherd boys, on the bank of the Yamuna River. So this is described in the 11th and the 12th chapter, especially in the 12th chapter of the 10th canto, how the cowherd boys and Krishna, every day they would go out with the calves at that time. Every day they would go out with the calves. Later on, when they would take out the cows, the calves would come and the bulls would come. Why? Because the calves used to go out with Krishna. But now when Krishna was older, Hare Krishna, it was time for him to take out the cows and not the calves. How do you think the calves felt about that plan? They didn't like it at all. And how do you think the bulls felt about that plan? They didn't like it. So what do you think they did? They went out with Krishna. So the calves and the cows and the bulls, they couldn't stay away from Krishna because Krishna, we do see Krishna as Radha Ballava. But do we really see Radha Ballava? Sometimes we may. But these cows and calves and bulls, they were so, and even in Vrindavan, even the water and the trees are so attracted to Krishna, and the birds and the bees. They cannot keep their minds away from Krishna. They cannot tolerate for a moment not being associated with him. That is the essence of what the spiritual world is like, what Goloka Vrindavan is like. It is all filled with love for Krishna. And we can get a glimpse of this, maybe from afar, or maybe depending upon who we are and what our consciousness is, closer. But we can get a glimpse of this when we're in the presence of Radha Ballava and Gaur Nitai and Jagannath Baladeva, Subhadra and Prabhupada in the temple room. And we can get a glimpse of it when all the devotees are chanting. Their minds, not only with their bodies, but their minds are absorbed in the Kirtan of the holy name. We get a glimpse of it. And that is the gift of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his gift of Sri Krishna Sankirtan, is that everyone can get a taste. That is the gift of going to a holy place like Sri Vrindavan. Is that there's a different fragrance almost, a different taste when the kirtan is going on, and we could be in a terrible mood, and our minds could be distracted, and we won't even have any idea of what's really going on. But if our mind somehow becomes absorbed, there's a different fragrance almost, something subtle, that's not material. It's not available in the material world. It's something that truly nourishes ourselves on the deepest level. It gives the nourishment that we are longing for, that the soul is longing for. When we were, myself and Mataji were young devotees, we were preaching in Hong Kong. And we used to teach some Indian families, some very wealthy people. And there was one boy that we both remember. He had a room. And in his room it was only shelves. And the shelves were filled with games and toys. And we watched him take down one toy and then take down another one and take down another one. There was no taste in it. There was no true satisfaction that gave him the happiness that he was looking for when he was going through his room. And his parents had supplied him with so many zeros that when you add up all the zeros, what if you have 2 zeros and you add them together, what do you get?
0.
And if you have 10 zeros, and if you have 1,000,000 zeros, and if you have a whole room full of zeros, so that's what it's like. Brahmanda Brahmate. So the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita describes the movements, what causes the movements of the living entities in this world, from one branch of the tree of material existence to another branch, to another twig, and this one and that one, and upper planet, and this pleasure and that pleasure. And why does the living entity travel? Why does the soul travel from one situation in the material world to another? It's because of his desire. Because he hasn't felt the satisfaction that he wanted, but he has a dream in his mind that that branch of the tree on that top shelf of my toy world may be something that will give me the satisfaction that I long for, that I'm missing. And Krishna says, okay, you want to try? Okay. And then we move to the next one, and the next one. And in this way, countless years and births we spend traveling from one place to the next in the material world, one body to the next. But in the Kirtan, in the association of Nithyananda Prabhu, in the association of Radha Ballava, in the association, we saw this with Prabhupada, it was subtle in one sense. And if you weren't in the right mood, you could easily miss it. If your mind was distracted somewhere else, you could miss it. I even asked Prabhupada about this. Sri Krishna, weren't you making some medicine there? What happened to it? It's disappeared. I once asked Prabhupada about this. I said to him, why is it, because sometimes you couldn't ask directly what was on your mind, a little bit indirectly, I asked, Prabhupada, why is it when you're in the presence of a pure devotee, sometimes you feel like completely free from material attachments or miseries, or you feel completely liberated, and then at other times it feels even worse. Your mind is so strong. I didn't say your mind is so strong. I said some people's mind, but I know which kind of people I was thinking of, and it was me. And it was, why? It doesn't seem to be anything. He just looked at me and said, answered directly, but in a simple way, he said, because the intoxication of Maya is very strong. And what does Maya do? Maya plants in our consciousness a hope that the reason why you, the real part of you, the soul, isn't feeling the satisfaction, you've achieved this, you've gotten that, when one's often below the age of 30, and this is really more kind of preaching to the ones who are in the second half of their life more. But in the first half of the life, you're sort of meant to go out and try this and try that, and try to get this and try to get that, and achieve and move forward and move upward. But then after, sort of in the second part of your life, you realize, well, I got this, I got everything I was hoping for, but still, there's emptiness, so much emptiness in my heart. Hare Krishna, Sri Krishna. What do you have in your hand there? They're right here. Yeah. Okay. Bhav Oshadis, Shotumanam Bharamat. What is the medicine, the ultimate medicine? So in the Kirtan, and it's subtle in a sense. Sometimes when the Kirtan is really powerful, it's not subtle at all. But it's just like one gets captivated. It's powerful. And regardless of one's own mood, one gets caught in the net of Mahaprabhu's mercy of the holy names. And a taste, a small taste perhaps, when we hear what the real effect of the holy names is, when holy names are, when we see, when Mahaprabhu is chanting and tears are pouring from his eyes, Evam vrata sapriya nama kirtya jato nodaga juta chitu uchaya satyato rodita gayanti unmaravan nrityadi loka bhaya. That Mahaprabhu says that his Guru Maharaj, Sripad Ishwar Puri, told him the essence of the Bhagavatam in one verse, and it was this, that when chanting the names of the Lord that are dear to you, or chanting the names of the Lord who is dear to you, either way, but the effect of that is chanting and dancing and tears and falling to the ground and jumping up and laughing and crying. It doesn't make any sense to an outsider, and the person who's experiencing this doesn't care at all. Lokabhaya doesn't care what the outsiders think, because this is what's going. This is the soul's actual life. It is not taking one toy from this shelf and frustrated, and taking another one from another shelf and traveling to this part of the universe and changing this person, changing this job, changing that partner, changing clothes, wearing brown hair and then green hair and then purple hair. Now, how much is that really going to satisfy one on the deepest level? Try something different. New car, new old this, old clothes, new clothes. So those who are in the second half of their life, they can be somewhat introspective and look back and see what really brought me the satisfaction that I longed for and then that I was hoping for. When all the Vaishnavas were chanting the holy names, Hari, Hari, and eating, they remembered how Krishna and Balaram ate with their companions, the cowherd boys, on the bank of the Yamuna. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nithyananda Prabhu are extremely merciful and extremely liberal. Darya, they're giving and giving without qualification required. It was Raghunath Das's good fortune that they accepted his festival, his dealings. And then Kaviraj Goswami says, who can understand Nityananda Prabhav Kripa Janabe Konjan? Who can understand the influence and the mercy of Lord Nityananda Prabhu? He is so powerful that he pulled Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come and eat chipped rice on the bank of the Ganga. So all the devotees, thank you. All the devotees who were surrounding Nityananda, they were in ecstasy. Why? What were they doing that was so ecstatic? And they were just sitting and eating some chipped rice. I mean, when you hear about it, it doesn't sound like very much was actually going on. And this is what happens in some of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. We don't capture the essence, or even in Krishna's pastimes, but especially in Mahaprabhu's pastimes, because Krishna's at least doing something extraordinary. He's lifting hills. He's killing this demon. He's dancing on the head of a huge serpent. He's dancing with thousands of ladies in the middle of the night. He's killing, he's a warrior, he's doing this and that. But what are they doing in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes here? They're sitting on the bank of a river and eating some rice. Common rice, not even fine rice, just the crushed, chipped rice. So why is it that all the devotees who were cowherd boys actually associating with Nityananda, headed by Ramdas Abhiram, they were absorbed in ecstatic love. They thought of the Ganga to be the bank of the Yamuna. Why? It's because they were with Nityananda Prabhu. The cowherd boys with Krishna, they were playing, they were wrestling, they were herding the cows. They were village boys. But where was the ecstasy? The ecstasy was in their love for Krishna. and that Krishna was reciprocating with their love. That was the ecstasy. And Krishna, and more amazingly, that Krishna, who controls unlimited planets, excuse me just for one moment. If I don't take the medicine, it won't work. There's deep philosophical import in that. More amazingly than the cowherd boys being so ecstatic in the association of Krishna is that the Parameshwara, the all-powerful, all-attractive, unlimitedly wealthy, unlimitedly strong, unlimitedly beautiful, Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's playing like a village boy. And this is what he wants to do. Because everyone in Vrindavan, from the boys to the trees, to the water, to the cows, to the gopis, to the elderly gopis, to the young gopis, to the, as I said, to the bees, the hills, they love Krishna, and Krishna wants to be with them. Who do we want to be with? We want to be with those who we love and who love us, because we are part of Krishna. And if we love someone, it's not us who loses. We gain what we always long for in relationship. If we love Krishna, we will not lose. We'll rather be fulfilled, the missing part. The missing part will be replaced. The part in our heart. When all the shopkeepers of many other villages heard about the festival, they arrived there to sell chipped rice, yogurt, and sweetmeat, sandesh, and bananas. As they came, bringing all kinds of food, Raghunath Das purchased it all. He gave them the price for their goods and later fed them the very same food. After Nithyananda Prabhu finished eating, he washed his hands and mouth, and he gave Raghunath Das the food remaining. He gave Raghunath Das the food that remained. And then he and Mahaprabhu sat, Nithyananda Prabhu sat and ate. Then all the devotees came and they gave flower garlands and chandan, and they decorated Nithyananda Prabhu and Mahaprabhu. And after they had eaten, and then Nithyananda Prabhu with his own hands, he decorated all the devotees and gave them flower garlands. It was all exchanges of affection, sincere, honest affection. Raghunath Das, who was greatly happy, he ate some of the food left by Nithyananda Prabhu. And you know what he did with the rest? He distributed it to his associates, to anyone who would come with him, who had helped him. He gave them, naturally, he gave them some mercy as well. So then Vrindavan Das Thakur more or less ends this part of the pastime by saying, I have described the pastime of Lord Nithyananda Prabhu in relationship to the celebrated festival of chipped rice and yogurt. Now, then they went to Raghunath, the Nithyananda Prabhu rested, and they went to Raghava Pandit's place that night, and they took more prasadam, and Mahaprabhu was there, and they danced and chanted. But there is one more part of this pastime that I will tell you in a few moments, but I first wanted to ask you if you had any questions, because I've been speaking for so long, and you've been so tolerant. Because it's not easy to sit and just listen, or even, it's not even easy to fall asleep because I was talking so loud. So you all were trying very hard, and thank you so much. Not easy to listen for a long time, I know that. So yes, you had a question?
Yes,
There's one over there, but there's one over here, and then Mataji, here next. Yes.
Prabhu, as you said, one of the examples that you gave from Hong Kong, you're preaching in Hong Kong.
Yes.
The child was trying to pick different games, but he was not getting satisfied.
He succeeded in picking different games.
Yeah, but he was not like, he knew that this is not going to give him happiness, so just putting them aside. So when we connect that to our own life, we tend to experiment with different things, but we are not also finding the taste in trying to do our, the regular duties and all that.
But what?
So how do I find my taste? Like, how do I find the real taste in Krishna consciousness? I want to serve and do different things, but I'm always part of playing with different games. So is it okay if I stop playing and just...
No, you should keep playing with those silly games until the moment you die. Now, what do you expect me to say?
But I'm inspired by what they say. I'm not true that, but we continue doing it.
See, what I think is that we often find ourselves in an awkward position. And that is, we're used to pulling down games that don't bring us satisfaction and throwing them away and then trying another game. But we don't sometimes have enough taste on the positive side to give us satisfaction. So we're sort of in this tatastha middle position, if you know what I mean. That wo bhi hai, wo bhi nahi hai. You can't go this way, you don't know how to quite go this way. So what do you do? Is that sort of your question? Sort of? How long have you been chanting?
10 years.
Yeah. Would you like to get closer to Krishna?
Yes.
Or would you like to play more games? Well, anyway, I would no need to answer that question, but everyone should ask themselves that question and answer it privately to themselves. But we'll have a moment for that a little bit later. But if you... Yeah, I'll speak about that in a few moments. But that's a real question that we want to ask ourselves. Do we want to play a little bit more? There's a famous Christian saint who he was very, very pious in his Christianity, but he had a girlfriend. So he was praying to the Lord, please give me your mercy, please give me your mercy, please make me love you, but not quite yet. He was ready, but not quite ready. And remember what was the first thing I read? Who remembers what the first thing I read? You don't remember, you're too little to remember. Who remembers the first thing I read? Raghunath Das. He said, do a lot of the work inside. Don't necessarily make huge... I mean, not that one shouldn't join the brahmacharya ashram if one's in a suitable position and condition in the right mind and gets good guidance to do that and wants some training. That's not what it is. But if you're in a situation, you have to wait for the right time sometimes to move forward. And different people, and what Prabhupada explains in a purport that I read earlier this morning to myself, he was explaining sort of everyone has a little bit of a different path and a different time. Can you hear the raining? What do you think of when you hear the rain? The gopis crying for Krishna. Do you sometimes cry for Krishna too? Huh? Oh, too shy to answer. Namala Krishna Mataji, did you want to ask a question? It's a little hard to hear because the gopis are crying very, very intensely at the moment. Just wait one moment, the microphone is coming. Very interesting instructions that Mahaprabhu gave. He said, keep your faith very deeply in your heart, and even, he said, enjoy in a suitable way for your position, whatever your position is. And then you cultivate that desire, and then you have to wait patiently for Krishna's mercy, and he will make an arrangement for you. That's what he told Raghunath Das. And when one reads this 6th chapter of Antya-lila, we see that he did make an arrangement for Raghunath Das, but soon as Raghunath Das saw that it was Krishna's arrangement, he acted. Are you just waiting for me to look that way? Okay, I'll look that way. Go ahead. Yes. Namala Krishna.
Now, Krishna is unlimited. Am I audible?
I can hear you, but it's not due to the mic, to this working properly. Krishna is unlimited.
And he can satisfy many people at the same time.
We could say
Everyone.
everyone at the same time.
Like the Rasa dance. She's dancing with so many gopis. Now here, why could she actually make Raghav Pandit also happy? And with that, and Raghunath Das Goswami. Or even more than that, the example of that Brahma when he cooked that sweet rice. And then after he was a poor Brahma, he cooked it. And then he could know that Mahaprabhu had already eaten somewhere else. So he felt so bad, he threw it away. So why couldn't...
I couldn't follow that again.
In another episode, there's a Brahma who wanted to cook sweet rice for Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He borrowed all the items and he happily cooked it. And then he could see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had eaten elsewhere. And so he felt so disappointed.
I don't know that pastime. I have to try a third one.
So it's why couldn't Krishna satisfy both at the same time?
Both? Who's the both?
Yeah, Raghav Pandit and Raghunath Das Swami, his price was going on.
Oh, he did.
No, at the same time. So he had to feel that, that God is not satisfying me and he had to go.
No, Raghava Pandit didn't go. Nithyananda Prabhu said, sit down, we're going to join the festival. You take some chipped rice. And Raghava Pandit was so happy. You know why he was so happy? Because his happiness was Nithyananda Prabhu's happiness. And his only desire in cooking was to make Nithyananda Prabhu happy. But sometimes, we who are very intelligent think that Krishna, I'm not saying that you did badly, but I could have done a little bit better if you would have done it this way. You can just make this arrangement instead of that arrangement, and I think that would work a little bit better. So sometimes there's a tendency to, not you or anyone like that, but sometimes some of us have the tendency to think that Krishna's plans are not executed in the best possible way. And there could be many reasons for that. We see that the situation in the world there's so much difficulty, etc. But Raghunath Das was asked by Mahaprabhu to be patient. And don't worry, Krishna will make his plan. Raghava Pandit didn't for a moment hesitate. He took the food that he had, he put it in front of Nithyananda, and he saw Nithyananda Prabhu's mood. He distributed it to the other devotees, and he said, please come this evening. Or Nithyananda even said that, I'll come this evening, and we will have another festival. And Raghava Pandit just sat down in a happy mood, enjoying the festival for the pleasure of Nithyananda Prabhu. He was very in harmony with Nithyananda Prabhu's desire. I remember one time, one sannyasi devotee, there was some struggle between two devotees in Japan. And Prabhupada suggested, and when Prabhupada suggested something, you knew that it was your job to accept the suggestion. He said, he said to one of them, why don't you go to Korea, Seoul, Korea, and preach? And that sannyasi, being very surrendered, he said, yes. And then later in the day, something happened, and then they found out some other devotees were there, and that wasn't going to work. And Prabhupada called him back in the afternoon and said, why don't you go to Chandigarh? From Seoul, Korea to Chandigarh. And he said, the sannyasi said, Prabhupada, just this morning you told me to go to Korea. And Prabhupada said, yes, and now I'm telling you to go to Chandigarh. And that devotee went to Chandigarh because it's so difficult to fight Krishna's desire. It's just such a struggle. And you lose anyway, so. We're all laughing, aren't we? We never do anything like that, do we? Let me just make sure, because I'd like to finish on time. But I think it's a reasonable question. See, if you read let me just think of the number. I think it's the 10th chapter of Antya-lila. You'll see that there's a question hidden in the question that you asked that Krishnadas Kaviraj answers in that question, in that chapter. Does anyone know what the 10th chapter of Antya-lila is? Without looking at your database or your app on your mobile phone? Well, I happen to know. It's Mahaprabhu takes prasadam. He takes all the prasadam that the devotees offer him. And it talks about Raghava Pandit very much, interestingly, how when Mahaprabhu was in Puri, they would go and visit him for 4 months of the year, and he would spend the other 8 months with Damayanti, his sister, cooking to make these bags, Raghavera Jali, these bags of prasadam to give to Mahaprabhu. But then it talks about later in the chapter how all the devotees, out of their love for Mahaprabhu, all the devotees from Bengal, they would bring Mahaprabhu so much prasadam. They would all cook something for him. And please take this. And they would give it to Govinda, Mahaprabhu's servant. And Govinda, and then they'd ask Govinda later, what did Mahaprabhu say when he ate my prasadam, the food I cooked for him? What did he say? And Govinda would have to make things up because Mahaprabhu didn't eat it all. He said, just put it in the corner for now. Put it in the side over here for now. And then one day Govinda was getting a headache. He was saying, I have to tell so many lies, Mahaprabhu. They brought all this food for you. Everyone who came brought something for you, your favorite foods that weren't available there. And please, do something. And Mahaprabhu said, okay, what's the difficulty? How much is there? And he said, this whole corner of the room is filled. He said, okay, bring it to me. So Mahaprabhu sat, and Govinda told Mahaprabhu who brought it and who cooked it and everything. And he ate it all at one time. And he said, of course, at the end, he said, any more? That's all. So there was a lesson in that. And that lesson was that don't worry. He'll take care of you. He'll accept your offering. He's not like He's not like, he doesn't get overwhelmed when so many people say, could you do this, and could you do that, and could you do that? Krishna can deal with it all and everyone. When the cowherd boys were in their circle on the Yamuna, Krishna was looking at each and every one of them. He was sitting in one place and he was looking at each and every one of them. He went with each one of his queens in each palace. He was there with them simultaneously, at the same time, in each palace. He is the Supreme Lord and he can satisfy everyone. And why he acts the way he does and why he interacts with our own fate in our own karma in our each individual way, I don't know. I asked that same question also. Why, Krishna? But our job is to be in harmony with it and serve. That's our test, to serve and do the best we can in every circumstance and help others. I don't know if I had all answered your question, but there it was. I wanted to finish this chapter. The festival. The next day, the chapter goes on, and it goes to the ending where Raghunath Das is serving Srup Damodar in the most intimate way, as he serves Mahaprabhu. So he becomes the servant of the servant. Yeah. So this is how this pastime almost ends. I won't read the last part, but in the morning, this was the day after the two festivals, the day festival at Panihati and the evening festival of Kirtan and taking prasadam again. After taking his bath in the Ganga, Nithyananda Prabhu sat down with his associates beneath the same tree under which he had previously sat. Raghunath Das went there and he worshipped Lord Nityananda's lotus feet. And he expressed his desire to Nityananda, not directly, but through Raghava Pandit. And this, he wouldn't speak to Mahaprabhu directly either, later on. He went through Srup Damodar, he would say, could you please ask? So through Raghava Pandit, he submitted his desire. And this is what he said. I am the lowest of men. I am the most sinful, fallen, and condemned. Nevertheless, somehow or another, this desire to attain the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has entered my heart, despite the fact that I have no qualification at all. I'm like a dwarf who wants to catch the moon. I've tried my best many times, but I have never been successful. Every time I tried to go away and give up my wealthy home relationships, my father and mother, unfortunately, they kept me bound. He said, no one can attain the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without your mercy, Nityananda Prabhu. But if you are merciful, even the lowest of men can attain shelter at his lotus feet. Although I am unfit, and I am, to tell you the truth, greatly fearful to even submit my request to you, I nevertheless ask you for this. Sir, please be especially merciful towards me by granting me shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Please place your feet on my head and give me the benediction that I may achieve the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without difficulty. I pray for this benediction. Because he had tried so many times, and he had even gotten the blessings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But he couldn't be successful. So he went to Nitai. And Nitai said, after hearing this, he told all the devotees, he said, Raghunath Das, his standard of material happiness is like that of Indra, the king of heaven. Because of the mercy bestowed upon him by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Raghunath Das, although situated in such material happiness, he does not like it at all. Therefore, let every one of you, he spoke to the devotees like this, let every one of you be merciful towards him and give him the benediction that he may very soon attain shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Nithyananda Prabhu asked all the devotees to bless him, Raghunath Das. Then Lord Nithyananda called Raghunath Das near him, and he placed his lotus feet upon Raghunath Das's head, and he began to speak. My dear Raghunath Das, he said, since you arranged the feast on the bank of the Ganga, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here just to show you mercy. By his causeless mercy, he ate the chipped rice and he ate the milk. Then, after seeing the dancing of the devotees at night, he took his supper. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came here personally to deliver you. Now, rest assured that all the impediments that were meant for your bondage are now gone. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will accept you, and he will place you in the charge of his secretary, Srup Damodar. You will thus become one of the most confidential internal servants, and you will attain shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, be assured of this. Return to your own home. Very soon, without impediment, you will attain shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then Lord Nithyananda had Raghunath Das blessed by all the devotees. And Raghunath Das offered his respects to their lotus feet. Happy ending. The blessings, and then the story will unfold, the pastime will unfold. And interestingly enough, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, as we mentioned before, he wrote this entire book after hearing all the pastimes from Raghunath Das, because Raghunath Das was there with Mahaprabhu and saw his pastimes, and he was assisting Srup Damodar, and he had Srup Damodar's own diary in front of him. But this pastime, this specific pastime, he personally witnessed and participated in. And he had seen Nithyananda shining, sitting under the tree on the rock by the bank of the Ganga, shining like hundreds of suns. So now what I would like us to do is naturally participate in this wonderful Chipped Rice Festival in this way. By sitting peacefully and chanting in your mind a little bit. And then, could you put up that picture again of Raghunath Das and Nithyananda Prabhu? and take a look at the picture, the painting. And Prabhupada would call these paintings, they're windows into the spiritual world. Now, just imagine if there was the characteristic of transcendental electricity, and if you would touch the lotus feet of Raghunath Das, perhaps even with your head, and he's touching the lotus feet of Nithyananda Prabhu, and all the Vaishnavas are giving their blessings. So why don't you take, as the gopis are crying, why don't you take this concept or picture or wonderful scene into your mind and heart, and praying to Raghunath Das and praying to Nithyananda Prabhu. And you might even close your eyes while you're doing this, and praying on a very deep level. You can submit your own story to Nithyananda Prabhu. Even the little ones can also do this. Do you think you can do it, Krishna Das? Close your eyes and think of Nithyananda Prabhu and Raghunath Das, and maybe even tell him the story of your life and what you want. And you can be really honest. You can be completely honest, even though you might not want to say it out loud. But between you and Lord Nithyananda, you can be completely honest. And you can pray for some mercy. And you can pray for some service, if you want some service. If you want some mercy without offering any service, you can also try your best. Nithyananda Prabhu was pleased with Raghunath Das, who served in such a pleasant mood, happy to be able to serve Nitai and all the devotees. And you can chant in your mind. And you can pray as deeply as you're capable of. Because Nithyananda Prabhu is very generous. And he's very funny. And you can offer some nice chipped rice. Half of it in yogurt, half of it champa cola, sweet yogurt, ghee, milk, condensed milk, bananas. And we'll have a wonderful festival arranged by Nithyananda Prabhu. You can open your heart to Nitai. And then, yeah. Okay. You can come back to our Chip Rice Festival in the tent, rained upon by the tears of the Braja Gopis. So now it is 1 o'clock, and we have something very special planned for 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. More mercy, a festival of mercy. If any of the young one wants me to touch the, I should tell you how I got this. But this, in the Gambhira, not in the Gambhira, right by where Mahaprabhu would stand, by the Garuda Stamba. He would stand there continuously. Oh, if you're going to take a photo, I'm going to hold it in my right hand, it'd be good. And there's impressions made there from Mahaprabhu's footprints. And when I was in Jagannath Puri, maybe more than 25 years ago, one person asked me if I wanted they would put some kumkum on that, on those footprints, and then take a cloth and make the impressions and give it to me. And you'll never guess what my answer was. Yes, please do that. And I said, 200 rupees. And I was very, very happy, obviously. But anyway, here they are. You can pray to the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu, and I don't have another hand, but here, Sri Advaita Charja. Wait, don't take photos now. Just pray instead. You know what we could do later? Maybe we can get one of the devotees to take a good photo of it, and then all the devotees can get a copy. That would be very nice. And these are available. So we'll end now, but all the little ones, all the smaller varieties, I will touch this to your head like this. And Mataji, maybe you can help with this one also. So, and I don't know how to do this without being here till 4 o'clock. The little ones, come. Jagattarini, when you come over. And you can take your hat off.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare Hare